Hello and welcome to this series of videos about tonal harmony. Understanding scales is essential to anyone that wants to play or to write tonal music. In this video, we'll cover major and minor scales, scales with sharps and flats, relative scales, and the circle of fifths. A scale is a row of notes. There are many types of scales: modal, blues, whole tone, chromatic. But Western tonal music uses mainly two diatonic scales, major and minor. These scales are a set of 8 consecutive letter notes, where the last one is a repetition of the first. They're called diatonic because the notes are at stepwise distance from each other, being the steps either tones or semitones. We use the scale that starts on C as a model for all the major scales. If we play 8 consecutive white keys in the piano from the note C, we find the following pattern of tones and semitones.
Tone, tone, semitone. Between E and F is a semitone because we don't have a black key in between these two notes. Tone, 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 semitone. So between B and C is again a semitone because there is no black key. So in the C major scale, we have tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone.
Here you can see the sequence of tones and semitones in major scales: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone. We use the scale that starts on A as a model for all the minor scales. If we play 8 consecutive white keys in the piano from the note A, we find the following pattern of tones and semitones.
Tone, semitone. Remember, between B and C, semitone. Tone, tone, semitone. Between E and F, again a semitone. Tone, tone again. So in the scale of A minor, we have tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone.
And here you can see the sequence of tones and semitones in minor scales: tone, semitone, tone, tone, semitone, tone, tone. Following those patterns of tones and semitones, we can build up any scale, but we will need to use accidentals to keep the same distances between the sounds. Therefore, if we start playing a major scale from the note G, we will say that we'll need to raise the note F to keep the C major pattern: tone, tone, semitone, tone, 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 semitone.
G to A, tone. A to B, tone. B to C, semitone. C to D, tone. D to E, tone. E to F, semitone. But we need another tone now, so we need to raise this note, the note F, by a semitone. And now F sharp to G is a semitone. And that's the scale of G.
C major and G major are separated by an ascending perfect fifth. If we add another ascending perfect fifth, we will find the scale with two sharps, D major. One more fifth, and we will need three sharps to keep the pattern of semitones and tones of the major scales. If we continue adding ascending perfect fifths, we will find all the scales with sharps up to 7 sharps, which is C sharp major.
C, G, D, A, E, B, F sharp, C sharp.
If we add the ascending perfect fifths from C, the new scales will need flats to keep the same pattern of tones and semitones as C major. The first scale we find is F major with one flat, then B flat major, E flat major, and so forth. The scale with 7 flats is C flat major.
C, F, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, G flat, C flat.
Observe that C flat is the enharmonic equivalent of B. G flat is the enharmonic equivalent of F sharp, and D flat is the same sound as C sharp. Therefore, we actually have 12 different major scales, not 15. A minor is the model scale for all the minor scales. Likewise, C major, we find the rest of the minor scales adding ascending fifths, then we find the scales with sharps, or descending fifths for the scales with flats. Each major scale has a relative minor. That means that both scales share the same number of accidentals. To find a relative minor scale, we go down a minor third from the tonic or first note of the scale. For example, if we want to find the relative minor of C major, we count a descending minor third from the note C. And then we find A, so A minor is the relative of C major. Consequently, if we want to find the relative major of a minor scale, we move up a minor third from the tonic. For instance, the relative major of A minor is C major. It's important to know which ones are the notes with accidentals in each scale. Like the order of scales, flats and sharps follow a pattern of adding ascending or descending fifths. Here we see all the scales with sharp notes. We find the sharp notes by adding ascending fifths. So the scales of C and A minor don't have any accidentals. The scales of G major and E minor have one sharp on F. The scales of D major and B minor have two sharps on F and C, and so on, until we complete the 7 sharps: F, C, G, D, A, E, B. The order of flats works exactly in the same way as the order of sharps, but just adding the ascending fifths. It's quite interesting to observe that the order of flats is just the same letters as the order of sharps, but backwards. B, E, A, D, G, C, F. To sum up, there are 24 scales in total. Many times they are represented in a circle, what we call the circle of fifths. Clockwise or to the right of the piano keyboard, we find the scales with sharps, and counterclockwise or to the left of the keyboard, the scales with flats. In each of these boxes, we can see the major scale, the relative minor, and the number of accidentals. The bottom three boxes show the 12 enharmonic scales. And also, opposite scales on the circle have the same color. That's because they're the farthest in the number of accidentals. For example, C major at the top with no accidentals and F sharp major at the bottom with 6 sharps. Then you might wonder why 7 differences are not the bigger distance between two tonalities, and the reason is the enharmonic scales. In our example, C sharp is the harmonic equivalent of D flat, which is only 5 accidentals from C. Thank you for watching. If you liked this video, please subscribe to my channel and don't forget to tick the bell.